My wife laughed. "Don't worry, it's just on Klarna," after buying a $2,000 handbag. I replied, "You're right. It's not real money." I called Klarna and had her credit profile separated from my account. When her first invisible installment was declined, and her credit score took a hit. The failure of our marriage wasn't due to infidelity. It was due to a fundamental disagreement on delayed gratification. I'm Adrian Hayes, 35 years old. My world is ruled by algorithms and prediction models as a risk analyst in Los Angeles. I believe that the future is always quantifiable. My wife, Chloe, believed the future could be simply manifested. She was 33, a luxury fashion stylist and influencer who saw debt not as a liability, but as a clever tool for accessing immediate pleasure. We lived in a beautiful apartment, funded by my strict adherence to financial rules. Chloe's salary, while decent, was volatile, and her spending was purely impulsive. The core of our conflict was buy now, pay never. She treated services like Klarna and Afterpay as magical portals to instant wealth. To her, the money wasn't real until the bill arrived months later. I tried to explain the concept of compound interest and credit risk. She'd just wave her hand dismissively. "Adrian, you are a genius with numbers, but you lack vision. You need to learn to manifest abundance." This contempt for my financial logic was relentless. She saw my careful saving as hoarding and my good credit score, which she relied on, as an invisible, free resource. The conflict reached its peak last Saturday. We were supposed to be finalizing a large transfer to our down payment savings. Instead, I found her on the living room floor, surrounded by tissue paper and the aroma of new leather. She held up a small, pristine box. "Look, Adrian! Isn't she beautiful?" It was a small, high-end designer handbag. I looked at the bag, then at her. "Chloe, we agreed to pause all non-essential purchases for the savings drive. How much was it?" She rolled her eyes, the victory of the purchase already outweighing my disappointment. "Don't worry," she laughed, tossing her hair. "It's only $2,000 and it's just on Klarna." That was the line that snapped the wire. The absolute disregard for real consequence, the entitlement, all disguised as a clever financial hack. I looked at the woman who was willing to mortgage our future for a handbag. I looked at her, and I delivered the line I knew would end the argument. "You're right," I said, my voice completely flat. "It's not real money." And I instantly decided that if she didn't believe in real money, she wouldn't have access to my real credit score. The moment she laughed and said, "It's not real money," I went into operational mode. As a risk analyst, I knew that the biggest asset she possessed wasn't her handbag. It was her access to my 850 credit score. That access was the key to her entire high-interest, high-spending world. I spent the next 3 hours in my home office performing a surgical financial extraction. I contacted every bank, every utility, and every subscription service that linked her identity to mine. The process was meticulous. First, I called the credit card company and had her supplementary card, which she used for emergencies, canceled, citing marital dissolution. Next, the utility accounts. I transferred the power, gas, and internet accounts, which were in my name, into hers, effective immediately. She had to now own the responsibility for the infrastructure she used. The core move was with Klarna. I called their fraud department and politely explained the situation. "My estranged spouse is leveraging my primary credit profile to secure non-essential debt without my consent. My lawyer had prepared a template affidavit proving the separation of financial interests." Klarna, recognizing the liability of a future divorce dispute, agreed to instantly separate her credit profile from mine and flag her account for high risk. The system was now segregated. The financial security blanket she thought was permanent was pulled out completely. Chloe was oblivious. She spent the rest of the weekend documenting her new handbag on Instagram, talking about the power of manifestation and how she deserved this self-care investment. She thought I was silently pouting. On Monday morning, I finalized the physical cut. I calmly transferred my share of our savings, which was the vast majority, into a secure private account. I left her with her meager personal checking account and the heavy weight of her new $2,000 debt. I then packed my belongings. I took only my clothes, my work equipment, and the expensive air purifier she always complained about. I left the handbag on the coffee table, an anchor to the debt she now owned. I drove out of Los Angeles, leaving behind the condo and the woman who confused credit with competence. The final execution was scheduled for Wednesday. Her first invisible installment payment was due. I knew the system I built would deliver the consequence directly to her credit history, where it would matter most. Wednesday morning was the deadline. The day her first, small, seemingly invisible installment for the $2,000 handbag was due to Klarna. I was already 1,000 miles away, settling into my new apartment, watching the news without sound. I hadn't heard from Chloe since I left. She was likely still attempting to process my abrupt departure and the shocking void in our joint savings account. The consequences of her "it's not real money" mindset began with a quiet beep. At 10 a.m. exactly, I received an automatic notification on my personal financial monitoring app. Klarna transaction failure, insufficient funds in linked account. The payment had been rejected. Her personal account, the one she thought was adequate for her independence, was insufficient to cover even the smallest payment of her impulsive luxury purchase. This was the critical moment of the protocol. Because I had formally separated her credit profile from mine, the failure wouldn't register as a minor bank error. It would register as a direct default on her own credit history. The failure was reported instantly to the credit bureaus. Her precious high credit score, the score I had spent years meticulously protecting and building, which she used as a personal currency, was about to take a devastating hit. The phone call came 45 minutes later. It wasn't Chloe. It was her best friend, Lana, whose voice was high-pitched with anxiety. "Adrian, Chloe is freaking out. She just got an alert from her bank and Klarna. What did you do to her accounts?" "I did nothing to her accounts, Lana," I replied, my voice calm and distant. "I simply removed my financial infrastructure from her liabilities. She wanted independence. She has it." Lana insisted that Klarna was being malicious. "The payment was only $90. Why would they destroy her credit over $90? "Because in the world of finance, Lana, accountability is absolute," I stated. "A default is a default, and I made sure the system knew exactly whose responsibility it was." I knew Chloe's world was built on image and the illusion of financial access. A sudden drop in her credit score was far worse than losing $2,000 in cash. It destroyed her ability to secure future leases, purchase cars, or even finance her next investment. The silence that followed was heavy with comprehension. Lana finally understood that I hadn't just filed for divorce. I had filed a financial injunction against Chloe's future. I hung up, blocked Lana's number immediately, and went back to work. The system had processed the output flawlessly. The time for emotional negotiation was over. The phone calls stopped quickly, replaced by the ominous silence of social collapse. Chloe's initial texts were about the money. Now they were about her reputation. She realized the credit hit wasn't just a private financial inconvenience. It was public exposure in her circle where credit scores and financial stability were currency. The cascade began when she tried to finalize the lease on a new, high-end studio apartment. She needed to move out of the condo, a property I had legally claimed, and she confidently applied for a lease. Her application was denied instantly. The reason was stark and brutal. Recent derogatory mark due to failure to meet financial obligations. The denial was a catastrophic blow to her image. She had built her entire persona around effortlessly accessing luxury. Now she couldn't even rent a small apartment without immediate scrutiny. She tried to contact her mother, hoping for a parental bailout. But her mother, who was also a high-level real estate broker, understood the severity of the credit score hit. "Chloe," her mother said, her voice filled with professional disappointment. "A credit default on a financing service like Klarna? That shows an absolute disregard for small obligations. I can't co-sign this." Chloe, trapped, launched into a frantic social media campaign. She posted vague, tearful statuses about being financially sabotaged by a petty ex who resented her success. However, my strategic silence had already neutralized her narrative. Her friends, already questioning her after Lana's frantic phone calls, began to doubt her story. They saw the denial, they saw the obvious financial distress, and the truth began to bleed through. The ultimate social reckoning came during a mandatory industry networking event. Chloe needed to impress a major client, but she couldn't afford a hotel room, so she stayed with a friend near the convention center. Her former mentor, a woman named Vanessa, whom Chloe had always secretly resented, approached her and delivered the final, devastating social blow. "Chloe, I hear you're having credit issues. Don't listen to the rumors, Vanessa. My ex is being vindictive." Vanessa didn't flinch. "No, I heard it from the leasing agent at the Plaza Lofts. They said you failed the credit check. It's not your ex, dear. It's your history." The judgment was cold, factual, and public. Chloe had lost the only valuable asset she had left, the illusion of wealth and reliability. She stormed out of the networking event, realizing that her meticulous reputation had been destroyed not by a massive lawsuit, but by a single, ignored $90 Klarna installment. The life she manifested was gone. The phone rang continuously after the networking event debacle. Chloe was calling from burner numbers, her tone shifting from rage to desperate pleading. She had lost her job offer and realized she was rapidly running out of places to stay. I finally answered one of the calls while sitting in my new, quiet home office, miles away from her chaos. "Adrian, you have to stop this," she choked out. "I'm facing eviction from my current sublet. I need my deposit back from the condo. You have to fix this." "Fix what, Chloe?" I asked, my voice calm, maintaining the analytical distance I always used for conflict resolution. "Fix the fact that you destroyed your own credit score over a handbag," she screamed, fully embracing the role of the victim. "You trapped me. You maliciously called Klarna to sabotage me. You knew that payment was coming out of the joint account. I knew you were using the joint account to avoid accountability," I countered. "You demanded financial autonomy. I merely made sure that autonomy was enforced by the credit bureaus." She tried to bargain, using the only currency she had left, our shared history. "I'll sell the handbag. I'll pay off the Klarna debt. Just promise me you won't report the next missed payment." "The damage is already done, Chloe," I said. "And I'm not here to negotiate your debt to Klarna. I'm here to finalize the end of our life together. She resorted to the ultimate manipulation, the accusation of malice. You enjoyed watching me fail. You did this because you resented that I bought something nice for myself. I resented your contempt, I corrected, my voice cold. I resented you laughing and saying, "It's not real money," while I was securing our actual future. I then delivered the final, devastating truth that sealed her fate. You thought you were dealing with a predictable husband. You were dealing with a risk analyst. And when I calculate the risk of continued exposure to your financial irresponsibility, the only logical output is complete severance. She went silent, her breath hitching. She knew the logic was airtight. You'll never find anyone who supports you like I did, Adrian, she whispered, her voice defeated. I hope not, I replied. I'm looking for a partner, not a financial obligation. I ended the call, filed the final separation agreement, and legally removed her name from everything. I had given her all the space she needed, and the price of that freedom was her own financial future. The phone call ended, and I didn't feel triumph. I felt the quiet, cold satisfaction of a logical system returning to equilibrium. My next step was to secure my home and officially terminate her residency. I drove back to the condo in Los Angeles, which I still owned, and found a formal letter tucked into the mailbox. It was from the building management. Chloe, in a desperate attempt to gain legal leverage, had informed the building manager that she was exercising her right to stay, claiming common law tenancy based on her sporadic payment of utility bills. The audacity was breathtaking. She had spent months preaching independence, and now she was trying to use the law to force dependence. I walked upstairs, inserted my key, and found her sitting on the sofa, clutching the $2,000 handbag. She looked small, defeated, but her eyes held a flicker of defiance. You can't come in here, Adrian, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. My lawyer says I have tenancy rights. You can't just kick me out. I didn't yell. I didn't argue the law. I calmly placed a manila envelope on the coffee table. I didn't come here to argue tenancy, Chloe. I came here to settle the debt. The envelope contained 2 documents. The first was the official letter from my attorney, clearly stating the legal non-existence of common law marriage in our state, and serving her with an immediate 7-day notice to vacate. The second document was more devastating. It was a copy of her current credit report summary, freshly pulled. The Klarna default was highlighted in red. You wanted to use the law against me, I said, my voice low and cutting. Fine. The law says you have no legal claim to this property, and the finance system says you can't get a new one because your credit is now toxic. Her eyes darted between the credit score and the eviction notice. The look of defiance dissolved completely, replaced by utter despair. She realized I hadn't just filed for divorce. I had executed a targeted financial lockdown. She threw the handbag onto the floor, the soft leather thudding silently against the rug. You ruined me. I have nowhere to go. You're trying to make me homeless. You made yourself financially homeless the day you chose a $2,000 bag over financial accountability, I corrected. I merely sent you the bill, which the bank is now enforcing. I walked to the kitchen and began systematically removing all the expensive groceries I had purchased before the split. I left the condo bare of anything she could liquidate easily. I looked at the woman who saw her debt as leverage. You have 6 days left, Chloe. I suggest you call your mother, because your credit score won't let you call a landlord. The 7-day notice expired, and I didn't return to the condo to watch her leave. Instead, I had my lawyer confirm the apartment was vacant, then hired a clean-out crew to remove the remaining clutter. The last trace of her chaotic, impulsive life was swept away. The immediate consequence for Chloe was absolute. She had nowhere to go. Her high-status friends, upon learning that she was homeless and facing credit ruin, immediately evaporated. I heard through my sister that Chloe was forced to move back to her mother's small, crowded house in the suburbs, the very environment she had always scorned. The woman who valued herself by her Los Angeles zip code was now stripped of her social currency. Her career as a luxury stylist was over. No one would hire a financial liability whose credit score screamed default, especially in an industry built on projecting financial flow. The $2,000 handbag, the symbol of her freedom, was eventually sold by her on an online marketplace for a fraction of the cost, used to cover rent she couldn't afford. The illusion of wealth was dead. I, meanwhile, was thriving. I used the money I had secured to buy a small, quiet house near the coast, a place where the sound of the ocean replaced the stress of her arguments. My focus at work intensified. The stability in my personal life made me a better, sharper risk analyst. I filed for a complete name change on all my remaining assets, effectively building a financial firewall between my old life and my new one. I never sought revenge against Chloe. I didn't need to. Her punishment was simply having to live the independent, accountable life she had always preached about, but never actually performed. She continued to send me sporadic, toxic emails from new accounts, not apologies, but bitter condemnations. She accused me of malicious destruction of her future. I deleted every one of them without reading past the subject line. I realized I didn't lose my dignity in that marriage. I simply sacrificed my trust to gain irrefutable evidence. I look out at the stability I built. My quiet home, my secure job, my life free of emotional blackmail. I realized that by giving her the autonomy she demanded, I had actually reclaimed the most important space of all, my own head and my own financial future. Closing reflection. She thought I was too predictable. I proved that my predictability was the silent, lethal force that ensured her absolute accountability. The verdict was in before she woke up. I just made sure she paid the interest.